this is a little bit of a confusing topic for me, to be honest, because
Mhm.
when you say project coordinator, like that doesn't really give you a great idea of what a project coordinator actually is. So what do you actually do?
So what I usually do, I guess best place to start would be my day to day, really. So my day to day job is to support the project and managers and senior project managers uh, on the planning and execution of events. Is probably the most simple way to put it. Um, so we work across um, heaps of different events and heaps of different areas of the event. And the project manager or the project lead is the person that looks after that. Project coordinators are there to assist them with anything they need help with, really.
Right, so you're like almost project assist. Like I think that's a good way of kind of describing what you do.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that, yeah.
So it could be like any number of things that kind of fall under that category, though, right? Like you could literally be doing anything on any given day, from maybe booking flights to sorting stuff in the warehouse or building truck pack plans, or what is it like, or what's the main duty, I suppose, that you end up doing the majority of the time?
That's exactly right. We could be booking flights one day, booking trucks the next. Uh, we can be organizing payment systems for different events. I guess that's more applicable to me. It's because it's something I'm not used to, but having to look after, like set up the payment system for an event we've got coming up, uh, and managing crew one day, sorting out the warehouse another day. It really, yeah, a, it's a broad range, which is really good.
All right, yeah. I mean, I think we do want to definitely dive deep into what you end up doing, like maybe on a standard week. But I
Mm.
want to do that a bit later because obviously, normally when I start this kind of a video, I like to find out who you are. So we obviously haven't gone through that yet. Let's talk a little bit about you. Obviously, you're the project coordinator or a project coordinator at ESL Australia. Are there any other project coordinators, or are you the only one?
There is one more. Yes,
Okay, there is one.
there is another one, and we are in the same team with under a senior PM.
Yep.
So we work together pretty closely, which is good.
So how did you like end up at ESL? Because I know you obviously had some previous jobs which were fairly similar, I want to say, into what you're currently doing, but obviously not within the esports sphere.
Yeah, so I only really got involved with the esports scene on IEM last year. That was my first ever ESL gig. That was my first ever esports event.
So that's not
Um,
even a year ago, by the way. That's like, it would have been May last year,
yeah,
roughly.
May last year. That's exactly right.
So I think that's a good, actually, I just want to touch on that because I think that's a really good point for people that are watching and they're like, oh, how can I get into esports, or how long does it take me to get in, right? You've done an event less than a year ago and now you have a full-time job in esports.
Yeah, I'm definitely very lucky, but I feel like I've been very lucky to get the full time job. Not even a year after my first esports gig,
All
but
right, let's talk
that's
about
not. Oh,
Let's
you
talk
go.
about that first esports gig
Yeah, yeah.
because that's, I think, a really good pathway to start at. You obviously said it was IEM last year. So what were you doing at IEM last year? Were you volunteering or?
No, it was actually a paid role as well. I
Right.
was one of the general crew assisting with the setup. I was one of the first crew on site, helping run cables for the upstairs convention, like the expo hall. Uh, and then I got taken under the wing by one of the project leads, and pretty much was working in the loading dock most of the time, kind of managing the equipment and uh, managing the equipment coming in and going out, and managing the crews that came in um, to build equipment and that kind of thing.
So
So
how did you get that job? Like, how did you get that first initial gig at IEM?
so this one goes a little bit back. So it's always been a goal to work in esports. So I mean, my background is theater lighting, so not really anything to do with esports. But there was always a goal that I wanted to take my lighting career or my career into esports. And so everything I did kind of had a you know, an aim to help me get to that realm, I guess. Uh, from lighting, I moved into festival logistics on some of the big festivals that come to mind. A St Kilda Festival in Melbourne, and Bleach Festival, and I did Oktoberfest Brisbane for a few years as well. All of those, I was doing operations and logistics. Um, a lot of forklift work, a lot of boom lift work, um, and all that kind of helped me to build my logistical mind, I guess. And then I started a full-time job at Brisbane Powerhouse as the head of lighting, and that's where I got a lot of experience in managing crew and managing, budgets, um, and yeah, all these different jobs have definitely helped me get to where I am now. Then some things started going on at Powerhouse where I really didn't want to be there anymore. So it was that I remember there was one distinct day where I was just having an awful day. I was really not enjoying it, and so at that point, that I remember that day, I said to myself, my next job is going to be in esports. Um, that day I applied for a role at ESL in Cologne as a stage technician, and I actually got an interview. I interviewed for a role at ESL Cologne, which was a really great opportunity. Obviously, I didn't get the role, but they put me in contact with Nick and Josh,
Yep.
and that's how the conversation started. I just started talking to Josh and Nick. And saying, "Hey, I'm super keen to get involved. Would love to volunteer on some events if you have a role free." Um, I went to PAX Australia and went to the ESL stage, and I went specifically there to go and speak to Nick or Josh, and that's how I met Nick. I had a good chat with him. Uh, that was PAX, not last year, the year before.
Which would have been
Um,
2018, right?
yes, that's right. And then I was emailing Josh back and forth from this point with nothing really locked in, um, which was good because I had the contact, but I really wanted to try and get something to happen.
Hmm.
Um, and then ESL was doing the AUNZ Champs in Brisbane at Supernova. So I went to that with a good mate of mine, and I that's where I met the project lead of the AUNZ Champs, and it basically I went and met him and said I'm keen. I really would love to
So
work
you
with you
you were kind
guys.
of a guy that was like literally banging down the door at any kind of opportunity that was available. Because you've gone to PAX, you've gone to ANZ Champs, you've talked to Josh and Nick on emails, like you've applied to Cologne. It's funny because when I actually started at ESL, I had also applied for a job internationally in ESL as well. I'd applied for a commentary role in Poland, and I had discussions with Nick and JB as a result of that as well. And then I ended up working in Australia, obviously. So it's kind of funny how that sort of all pans out.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's it's,
Um,
it's a case of just getting your foot in the door and banging down the door, really.
yeah, I mean, I really think I was being a pain in the ass, but
Sounds like it.
I was I was super keen. I really wanted to get a job in the
Hmm.
esports world, and so I just every single chance I got, I just really tried to make it happen.
So
Um, and
did,
then just from that, because I showed I was keen, and because I went to Supernova,
hmm.
I found out later on that doing that showed the powers that be that I was really keen, and from that I got asked to work as general crew on IM. Uh, partly because of me showing us keen, the other part because I had my forklift license. But
That'll help. Yeah, I was going to say, I think you do have like a certain skill set that's pretty relevant even to esports. You know, particularly what you say about the events that you've worked on, the festivals, more so seems like almost the exact thing that you need for like a crew member at an esports event. It's like almost a direct translation. It feels like.
Absolutely. Uh, at the end of the day, the events are the same. It's just the content
Correct.
that's different.
Yep.
And that's the way that I kind of went into IEM. I really was like, okay, yes, this is this is esports. This is where I want to be, but I'm just going to look at it like it's any other event
Mm.
because obviously, if I don't want to blow smoke, but I'm good at what I do, and so I don't need to change that just because it's in the esports world. It's an event, and so I just got to work as I usually do,
Yep.
and so that's what I did.
So what was that experience like at IEM? The very
Oh,
first one you worked with ESL.
it was absolutely one of the best events I've ever worked on in my career. I
Can I ask
absolutely,
how many hours you worked at that event?
it was a lot. It was a lot,
I'm
and
not
it was
surprised.
quite interesting because uh, there's this one thing that stuck with me from IM where I was having issues with my shoes at the time, and I was on my feet so much, and I started getting like a bunch of um, sores on my feet, and it was just.
Mm-hmm.
I remember by the end of the week, I was actually just limping around, and
Yeah.
everyone would point it out. It's like, are you okay? Like,
Yeah.
what have you done? Um,
Yeah. I had a similar experience at the very first IEM, which was 2017, when I was unlucky enough to still be doing the bump ins and bump outs. But I was also working in an on camera role, not on the broadcast, but still an on camera role. So I was wearing my nice, my nice clothes, and I had dress shoes on, and I did the bump out in the dress shoes, and that was like the worst mistake of my life because you're basically walking around on wood for like 4 hours.
exactly.
Not a good strat. Anyway,
Not a good
I think it's safe to say for you that like this kind of a job and this kind of a role and the transition into ESL has been sort of very fulfilling. Like it's a similar role to what you had been doing previously, but in a an industry that you have a passion for.
exactly. It's just I've always had a passion to be in esports, and it's just yeah, it was great to get that chance.
Mm.
And I really wanted to work in a way to show them how keen I was, and hopefully get into a full time role from that.
Well, you've done that now. The opportunity to tell other people how to do it. So I want to sort of break down a little bit more what it means to be a project coordinator and like what kind of person it takes to be a project coordinator. Because obviously, I feel like you're a pretty driven, motivated, and like you kind of know what you're doing sort of guy. If that makes sense, that's just the aura that you give me. But do you feel like that's a good summary of the kind of person that it takes to be a project coordinator, or is there's sort of something else that you'd look for? Maybe if let's say you're hiring another project coordinator, what are you looking for?
That's absolutely right. The drive to I guess the drive to complete an event, or the drive to further the further the industry. Someone who's passionate about the industry and wants to further the industry, like that is immediately a great choice. Someone who's not afraid to work long hours and get the job done. Obviously, the role has some long hours at times, and people who are not afraid of a challenge is another great one. There's always challenges that pop up through this role, and knowing how to overcome them and find solutions. Just a good problem solver is another good one. Um, yeah, those are some of the great the those are the some of the qualities that
Qualities,
people
yeah.
would need. Yeah,
So
to be.
do you have much of a say or any input into like who gets hired for events or who gets through the sort of the volunteer process or anything like that?
I do work with the project managers on. I work with project managers on what casuals we look to hire, put on events and that kind of thing. But usually it's project managers that kind of make that call.
Right.
Um,
But
because
you
I
could
mean,
be essentially you could be the guy that's like, nah, we're not using that person again. Like, have you had any horror stories?
uh, Honestly, personally, I haven't, but obviously, I've only been in the role for like 7 months or so. So
There's
I'm
always going to
sure.
be one.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, to an extent, I we could say, I'd prefer not to use that person, use someone else or something. And
Right.
yeah,
What do you think someone would have to do to like get kind of vetoed? Like if they did one event and then you said we're never bringing them back, like what sort of thing would you say is almost an insta blacklist?
basically, I guess it kind of goes into what what we look for in casuals as well. Basically, we like people that are forward thinking. Uh, I like I like crew that who are quick on their feet and they're quick to work.
Mm,
They've got drive to complete the task that they're doing. Um, Punctuality is a big one as well.
yeah,
Obviously, in the events industry, you need to be keeping to a schedule that is already very tight. So punctuality is definitely a big one. Um, if I have a casual that is um, questioning a lot of the things that I'm asking to do. Um, like you're always gonna have back and forth with casuals. And I'm one for a team mentality. If someone's got a better way to do something and they say, why don't we just do it this way? And it's a better way to do it, sweet, that's great. Let's go.
mm.
I don't like to what's the word? I don't like to
Be the boss, and
be the boss. I
yeah,
like to be I try and be a leader with
yeah,
crew.
yeah.
Um, So if someone comes up with a better idea, sweet, let's go. Like that's a better idea. We're going to do that because there's no point doing, you know, the way I said just because it was the way I said it if it's not the best way to do
Mm.
something. But someone that will, I mean,
You're trying to say
someone,
this in a nice way. Just be
yeah.
savage. Just be savage.
If someone's being a real asshole about something that I've said
Yeah,
and they start talking back and that kind of thing, I will most likely not want to bring you back
yeah.
um, because I want everyone. I will respect you if you respect me. That's the basic principle of it all.
All right, that makes sense. So I think we've kind of gone over what you want and what you don't want out of someone in that role, but we've sort of also talked about how you got into that role. But I think it's maybe beneficial to talk about maybe how someone who has never done anything in esports could potentially look to, let's say, work with ESL, because obviously that's where you work at the moment, but just as a greater scope, also finding any sort of gig in the esports industry similar to what you're doing. Like, is there opportunities to volunteer? Is there that kind of stuff around? Like, what's the go? How do you get that job?
Yeah. I mean, ESL is doing some careers workshop, which I'll speak a bit more about later. But volunteering at events is seems to be the best way. Volunteering is a really good way at showing that you're keen to work in the industry and not just to get the payday. You're
Hmm.
there out of your own time uh, to further the industry, to help at the event, you know? So that's a really great way to get your foot in the door. Um, and showing that you're keen. I just can't understate that enough. Showing you're keen, always letting people know when you're available. Um, yeah,
Knocking down the door,
getting
rocking up at
exactly
ANZ
knocking, knocking.
Champs, talking to Mike Star, doing all that sort of stuff.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Do you think it's beneficial as well for people to like work at an events company? I don't know, something sort of doing rigging and that kind of stuff, or is that maybe not quite as relevant?
It's hard to say because it depends the kind of role you're going for. I mean,
Hmm.
a lot of my lighting experience. I mean, it's kind of not really useless, I guess, but I'm not using any of
You're
my
not doing
lighting
any lighting,
experience.
right?
I'm not hanging lights every day and
Mm.
like running power, that kind of thing.
But if you needed to, you could. That's the difference, and I think that is something that might crop up one day.
Exactly. It could be. There could be that one event where I need to hang a bunch of lights, um, and it's just great because that's what I used to
Yeah.
do. So, um, so to an extent, yeah. You know, having event experience will always help because you know the ins and outs in events. You know how to put on an event.
Hmm.
So, um, yeah, making sure you do have some live event experience will always help.
Yeah.
But I still think that, yeah, just showing how keen you are to not just, you know, yeah,
I think
have
from
the
you go.
just showing that you're not just keen to for the esports payday. You're
Right.
there to better the industry and further the industry.
Yeah. Well, the esports payday isn't probably what you should be working for in the first place, if I'm being quite honest. But either way, from my, I suppose, somewhat limited experience as a bump in general crew kind of guy, I think what you said about having a degree of experience doing events is pretty valuable because for me, it was kind of like, holy cow, there's actually, like we're expected to do what? There's so many things and so much time that goes into actually putting on an event like that and putting or getting all of the equipment into place and all that sort of stuff that you don't really realize, I think, until you've kind of done it. So it can be a bit of a rude awakening if you go in completely fresh.
Absolutely. One of the biggest shocks, I guess. There's a lot of planning that obviously goes into schedules and bump ins and that kind of thing. And then looking at the schedule sometimes can just be a bit like you expect us to do all that in that amount of time.
4 hours or 5 hours or something. Yeah.
But I mean, when you've got a really good casual pool like we do at the moment, um, those tasks will take no time at all.
Yeah.
Everyone's really keen. Everyone works really hard, and that's yeah. Again, that's something that I really like in casuals.
That's the crux of it. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about what like a normal week might be like. And in fact, actually, this past week or the next coming week might be a good one as an example because this is being recorded just before you go to Melbourne for the Pokemon event. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So, like, let's say you've got the event on the weekend, which is what would be the case most of the time. What's happening on a Monday through to the Friday, and then we'll talk about what's happening on the event days as well. So, let's say it's Monday at the moment. Like, what's the go?
As in events next Saturday
Yeah, the
or
event is
yeah,
next.
yeah,
The event is coming in the next weekend.
yeah. Uh, so this week is going to be I fly to Melbourne tomorrow. The uh, the the majority of the all of the planning has been done. Like at this week, from this week, it's execution.
Okay.
So we will just need to execute the plans that we've put in place over the last like 4 or 5 months, and actually do the things. Just put on the gig.
All
So
right. Well, let's maybe
what?
jump back a little bit quickly then,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
tell me what goes into planning for an event like this.
yeah. So this event I've been leading for quite a while now, and we a lot of planning has gone in. There's obviously so on such a big event. There's a lot of moving parts. So the biggest thing is going through and making sure that we're fulfilling the client's needs, and then uh, working with suppliers uh, and different suppliers to make sure that they've got the equipment and making sure the equipment turns up at the right time, and making sure that we can get it all installed in the time that we have available. uh, it's yeah, a lot of planning uh, goes into it. So I'd say with in a respect of time spent planning versus executing, um, we're going to execute this 5 months of planning in one
Yeah.
week. We've
So
got 3 days of 2 days of bump in a day rehearsals and 3-day event.
yeah.
Like
Well, like when it comes to planning, I guess you're across like rostering the crew, You're across the packing list, you're across the client, you're across sort of all of that.
Yeah, everything. So I this one,
Power plans, etc.
yeah, every single aspect. I'm across on this one because I'm the project lead on this event. So
Hmm.
which has been a challenge being so new to the industry. But I've absolutely loved the opportunity. It's definitely not really getting thrown in the deep end, but trial by fire.
Yeah, I kind of want to go into the context, or at least give some context as to how much planning goes into an event like this. Now, again, I'm speaking from a little bit less of an experience than you, but from what I have seen, even down to the amount of power cables you need is sort of accounted for in that planning phase. You make your power plan, and okay, I need to run power this far or for this many PCs or however many that is, and then you're like, okay, well, to do that, I need 20 10-meter extension cords, and I need 40 kettle cables, and I need 30 network cords or something like that. Like, that's the kind of thing that goes into this kind of event, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the level that we get down to.
Level of
So,
detail.
we've got this many people in this area. We need this much power for these devices. The power needs to be run to this point, and we need to supply, this many circuits of power so we don't start blowing uh blowing fuses and that
Yep.
kind of thing.
And it
You
might
know,
not even just be power, right? It could be like tables, chairs, whatever.
Yeah, tables, chairs, network, cable, branding, everything. Every single aspect is
Hmm.
what we've been working through for the last, almost half a year.
So the
So
idea with the planning is you want to know where everything goes before you get there.
exactly. So yeah, we don't want to be figuring out where something's going to be going. This week is all about execution.
Okay. Well, let's jump into this week then, because we've talked about the planning phase, which can be quite substantial if you say it's gone for 4 or 5 months for this one event. But we're now at the week of the event. You're flying to Melbourne tomorrow. What's happening tomorrow?
So tomorrow, I obviously am flying to Melbourne. I have a crew that will be loading all the equipment that we packed in the last 2 weeks onto the truck, so that it can be freighted to Melbourne for unload on Tuesday. Um, I'm flying down tomorrow because I'll be on site first thing Tuesday morning at around probably 5 to 6 a.m. So um,
Doesn't
getting
sound
in
like a good
there
time to me.
getting in there really early to ensure that we're going to be executing right from the word go.
So the truck rocks up then on Tuesday. How many people you got there? What are they doing? What's happening there?
Yeah, we've got basically all our crew from the production team will be turning up on Tuesday, and they'll help us unload the truck, and then we just start setting up. We'll start setting up tables, chairs, uh, production area for the three different streams that are in this event. So a lot of production on this on this particular
Hmm.
event for the three different streams and different areas. Uh, and yeah, hanging branding. The stages will be installed, all the lighting. Yeah, we hit the ground running from Tuesday.
And how long does that normally take? I mean, not necessarily just for this event, but let's take it as a general thing for an event like Pokemon, an event like AO or IEM or MEO or something like that. How long does that kind of a bump in normally take?
So I mean, for Pokemon in particular, we've got Tuesday, Wednesday all day to bump in with a Thursday rehearsal.
That seems like a long
And
lead time to me compared to some
yeah,
other events.
yeah, absolutely. Like we absolutely will have less time. You should sometimes you'll have one day to complete it.
Hmm.
The good thing is we've with our time in the venue we're able to spread it out slightly. But um, yeah, a lot of events, a lot of times, I guess like with packs, you can have one or 2 days to set up a stage. Um, yeah, it it really depends on the event and the amount of equipment and amount of stuff you've got going on.
And the availability of the venue as well. For
Availability of
yeah,
venue,
bigger
yeah,
venues are going
so
to
many
have an event
factors.
that is like literally a day after yours. So you sort of need to. In most cases, I feel like or not me anymore. Luckily, you need to bump out right within. You finish the event, let's say at 6 p.m. on Sunday, and then you bump out, and you have to be done almost by midnight that same night.
The event comes down on Sunday at 5 o'clock. We've got to be out of the venue at 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
We've got
exactly.
5 hours to remove 2 days of
Bump in,
bump
yeah.
in.
So
Yeah,
what takes 2 days to set up has to take 5 hours to set down in
exactly.
a way,
Yeah.
bump out. Not a fun turnaround, I'm sure. But hopefully you guys are going to be able to manage. I'm sure you will.
Oh, absolutely. I've got no second thoughts
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Well, we did skip a little bit in the middle there. Obviously, we talked about the bump in and the bump out. The event days, though, are I would hope a little bit more chilled out for you in particular. Is that going to be the case, or
Uh, I the Pokemon events for us during the day, they're constant, but there shouldn't be obviously too full
yeah?
on, because the stream will be happening, the production guys will be looking all after that. It'll just be working with the client and the tournament organizers and making sure that they've got everything they need. Um, and if there's anything that they need or that they require that we hadn't got beforehand, we can just work with them and get them what they need. We're there to assist. Um, we're there to assist them with their requirements.
So the
So
idea is more or less to do all that planning beforehand, so that when you actually get to the event and once it's all set up, there's not so much that you need to necessarily be doing. You're kind of more there to fight fires if fires arise.
absolutely, that's exactly right.
Right. Well, that I guess gives a good insight as to what would happen on a normal event week. Obviously,
Hmm.
a lot of planning involved. I was going to ask you, what's the ratio of planning versus executing, and it sort of seems like, in that instance, at least 4 or 5 months versus 1 week of execution.
Absolutely right. Yeah, um, a lot of planning, especially on an
Mm,
event of this size, for a week of bump in event bump
yeah.
out. And the great thing is, I've always loved that style of work. I love planning something out. Uh, Lots of planning, lots of time,
Do you
and
like
then
spreadsheets? Are you that kind of guy?
look, spreadsheets and I have a very interesting relationship.
Love-hate relationship, I guess. I'm a big spreadsheet fan, so I don't know. I just thought I found a kindred spirit, but maybe not.
I have no issues with spreadsheets, um, but a lot of planning for an
Mm.
event, and then good solid execution is just so satisfying for me. I love it.
So how important is like having a team that you sort of trust and have worked with a lot before? Because to me, it seems like from what you're telling me, it's really a case of you've worked with that crew before, you know what they can do, and they know what they need to do, and like you can almost say, okay, well, here's the packing list. Make sure you pack this, and you can kind of
Abs-
trust that they've done it.
Absolutely, and that's the great thing about the casual pool we have. Um, we I know how they work. They know that they know what needs to happen, and they know that what I require.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I've got a really good relationship with the casuals, and uh, got a really good uh working relationship with them, and they know exactly what needs to be done. So it is there is obviously the managing that needs to happen, but uh just yeah, that we've got a great
Once
casual
they're
pool
at the
crew.
point of being able to self manage, that's the ideal situation.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Talk to me a little bit about some of the nuances between different events, because obviously, putting on something like IEM or MEO must be quite different to say ANZ Champs in the studio,
I can't really speak much to ANZ Champs, or what
or
used to be
something of that
AUNZ.
caliber, maybe.
Yeah, but the obvious differences there are the sizes, right? Like
Mm.
IEM and Mio, they're mega events. They can have anywhere from 150 to 200 staff at any time working on those events, with thousands of spectators coming to see them. Whereas something like ANZ Champs, you've got on like mostly online phase until the finals, which is a LAN event. Um, so I mean that's one of the most obvious differences. But I mean, you've still got to do pretty. You've got to still do the same thing. You've got
Right.
to work through the schedules. You've got to work with the client, work with suppliers. Um, it's just obviously the amount. It basically, I would say, it scales pretty
Linearly, maybe.
linearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good word. Scales pretty linearly with
So it's really like less about maybe differences in the job and more about like the scale of or the amount of work. It's the same work. It's just there's more of it for the bigger events.
yeah,
All right,
definitely.
that makes sense. Well, I want to sort of talk to you a little bit about what possible future careers you could see maybe for yourself or for someone in this kind of a role. Like, where does this role that you're doing right now lead, and what are the skills maybe that you are building or have built that you think could be relevant to transition into another role in the future?
Yeah. Well, this role, I'm hoping, and it should lead me towards one day hoping to be a senior PM,
Yeah.
um, and maybe looking after one of the big events that ESL does. Not saying Pokemon isn't a big event; it's a big event, but
It's not
one of
IEM.
the yeah, it's not AM obviously.
Yeah.
So hopefully one day getting to uh, be the project lead on one of those events. That just is really exciting. The skills that I'm getting from this role, project work is really project work really applies to anything. Like the skills you get from project managing, uh, you can apply it to literally anything. So a good example that I got from someone once was like if you're building a like a model boat, so you need to plan the materials, need to talk to suppliers to get the right materials. You need to, uh, build out your schedule in that you need to do this part before you complete this part. Uh, and then you need to budget for those things. Like
And
it,
then you need to
project,
execute.
sorry.
Then you need to execute.
Exactly. Then you need to do it. And the skills I'm picking up from working in as a project coordinator are definitely helping me in pretty much anything I do.
So even if you moved outside of esports, you feel like this would still be pretty relevant to maybe being a project coordinator or project manager within I don't know a festival or some other kind of event. Maybe you're setting up for a sporting event or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the skills definitely transfer.
Hmm.
But I'm definitely in the esports for the long run.
All right. Well, we'll see how. And speaking of the long run, that's where I sort of wanted to transition into next. For the role that you're in right now, what do
Mm.
you see for that in the next 5 or 10 years? Like that's a role that would still exist in
Oh,
5 or 10 years.
absolutely, absolutely. The way I kind of see this role is a great starting point
Hmm.
um, to progress into project management. Um, so this role definitely is the role that will work across many different tasks towards one goal of a final event. Um, but it's the way I kind of see it is that it is not really it's the entry level, I
It's like the
guess.
stepping
So
stone.
say, yeah, it's the stepping stone. That's right.
It
It's
teaches you
the
the fundamentals and that kind of thing.
teaches the fundamentals. You work closely with the
Mm.
project manager um, who helps you and teaches you the different nuances of different events and thing. And then, uh, yeah, you develop those skills into a project management role. I absolutely think this role um, will be still around, and it's just I think um, it is absolutely a great stepping stone into project management.
Yeah, definitely has its place within the industry and the ecosystem.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the career workshop. Obviously, we're getting to the end more or less of the chat now. So the floor's yours, I suppose.
Yeah, so ESL is doing two careers workshops coming up there's one going to be in Melbourne on the 19th of Feb at Melbourne Convention Centre, and then one in Sydney on the 4th of March at our studios. So these workshops are going to be great to learn. about how to get involved with esports, how to get involved with ESL, and definitely get your name out there, get your name there on our on our list to
On the radar.
we on the radar basically. Yeah, wow, because we're always looking to expand our casual pool. Like I talk about how amazing our casuals are. They are amazing, but we're always looking to expand. So I definitely highly recommended that people who are interested sign up and come to the workshops, because again, I stressed on it before, showing you are keen, that is absolutely that goes so far.
Yeah, I've
So
chatted with a few people already on this particular series, and that seems to be something that sort of transcends across the roles. When it's coming to esports, it's like showing you keen and showing you can do it is kind of a big deal.
exactly. So yeah, I definitely highly recommend that anyone that is keen and anyone that wants to learn about how to get involved with esports and get your name, get put your name on our radar, definitely come to one of the workshops.
Hmm.
So again, Melbourne 19th of Feb at MCEC, and then Sydney 4th of March at ESL. If people want, they can hit up my Twitter, and
Hmm.
I've got a link to the form to sign up.
Yeah, your Twitter's on the screen as well. I'll put a link into the YouTube description as well. So if anyone's keen on that, make sure you check that out. Now, very last point, and I feel like you've sort of already touched this, but I was going to say, do you have any advice for the new generation or people that are interested in maybe doing the same position that you're doing?
Just yeah, again, it's showing that you're keen, and putting your name there out there, and and having some experience with live events will always help. But definitely turning up to a workshop will definitely help you out.
Be a bit of a bonus. All right, well,
Yeah, yeah.
it seems to all make sense. Seems to all be in line with the expectations and all of that. So, thanks for chatting, Matt, because it was insightful. I suppose it's not I think a role that's necessarily talked about quite as much as maybe something like what I did earlier, which was broadcast talent. You know, that's a very public facing role. But for you to be able to get these kinds of thoughts out, I really appreciate it.
No worries, mate. Thank you for the opportunity. It's always good to showcase the
Behind the scenes.
what goes on behind the
Mm.
scenes. Exactly. Yeah.
Hey guys, that was Matt Milne, one of the project coordinators at ESL Australia. You can find him at Milnerr93 with 2 R's. I don't know what it is with these people and putting 2 letters at the end of their Twitter handles, but there you go. Anyway, he was talking a lot about the ESL Careers Workshop, a link to which I put in the description box below. I think by the time that I upload this video, the first one's probably already going to be done, which would be the one in Melbourne. There is still going to be one in Sydney later on in March. I hope you're interested in checking that one out. I think it is really relevant to the videos. Otherwise, thanks for checking the video out, and I hope to see you next time.